Hello and welcome to a Surge Media production. Just to let you know that voting will be open from March 1st to March 3rd, and we highly recommend that you guys vote. Without any further ado, hello and welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm Amrit.
And I'm Charles.
And we are here with the candidates for Vice President for Welfare and Community. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves with your name and your degree and what you're studying?
Hello, I'm Harry. I'm doing neuroscience. My pronouns are they, them.
Hello everyone, my name is Sophia. My pronouns are she, her, and I study philosophy and politics.
Hi, my name's Vic. I do English. My pronouns are she, they, but anything is fine, I don't really mind.
Hi, I'm Laura Carpenter. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a second year English student and I would love to be your next VP Welfare.
Hello, I'm Beams. I'm doing VP Welfare. I'm in my second year of Master of Stats. You can refer to me by they.
Thank you. And what makes you the best candidate for this position? Starting with you, Harry.
Starting with me. So I believe I have quite a unique perspective when it comes to community and welfare, and being a mature student, I'm kind of like from a minority. I'm also non-binary, so that included. And yeah, working with communities in developing countries like Nicaragua, and working with communities at home with younger people, yeah, makes me a good candidate. Yeah.
Just quickly, how old are you?
I'm 25.
Oh, nice. I'm 23. I started 2 years later as well.
So I think I'm a good candidate because SUSU and its welfare support team needs to change a lot. And I mean, my committee on LGBTQ society will agree I'm quite an unconventional person, especially in my policy making. And I think that's what we need. We need that kind of convention-breaking energy in SUSU to modernize our welfare policies and to make SUSU a better and safer place for everyone.
Oh, do you want me to go? Okay. Yeah, so, well, I've been doing this kind of thing for quite a long time. So from about the age of 13, I was kind of very invested in kind of helping people. I always used to volunteer at my local charities. I would help out hospices. I've founded a bunch of mental health forums online. When I was in my sixth form, I did a lot of things with disabled people in my school. And this year, I've kind of taken it to another level and become disabilities officer, and I've achieved quite a few things here with the help of our current VP Welfare, Aisha. And I just want to step it up another notch, you know?
So I think there's a few things that would make me a very good VP Welfare. Firstly, I think it's my... Oh?
Yeah, bring the mic up.
I'm so sorry. Firstly, I think it's my experience. I've got a lot of experience in leadership roles linking to welfare and community here at SUSU, both as a course rep getting feedback from our students, as a wellbeing officer, and within our societies as welfare sec for 4 of our societies here. I also have a very unique experience with welfare, where I have worked in multiple support settings and services throughout Southampton and the wider community, including working for the Samaritans.
I think that I'd be good for the role because the thing that drew me to the role was because I've accessed a lot of support before, and I've been in the position where I've needed welfare support, and like it's like sorry like I've had to retake my final year because of poor mental health, and struggling with like disability and everything, and it's taken a lot for me to be able to reach out for help. So I kind of just want to support other people who also find it difficult and who struggle. And yeah.
Thank you for that. Regarding what you said about mental health, for everyone, what actions will you take to support students' mental health, and what do you think that SUSU are not currently doing right now to help support students with their mental health?
Great question. The first few things I would do is like continue and introduce education and awareness programs. I'd also so I do that, and make sure. And I would make thank you. And I would make sure like SUSU is continuing to lobby the university on providing the students with the necessary help, and also like providing support networks for students. One of my key points is introducing or like reviewing the peer schemes, and I think it would be important for like students to support each other, and I think bringing in a new peer scheme or reviewing the current one would do that. And just making sure SUSU is doing all that they can to lobby the university.
So on mental health, I think mental health is an intersectional issue, and so I would take an intersectional approach. Firstly, on what people would consider pure mental health support, I think SUSU need to collaborate far, far more with the University of Southampton on issues. We need to establish collaborative things because we're serving the same people and we're both trying to do the same thing. We need to work together more. But it's also, the reason I say it's intersectional is because not having enough money or being the victim of hate is not good for mental health. It causes a lot of stress and anxiety. And so I think my policy is to promote, to help with cost of living, and also to work against hate and promote understanding within the students' union and across the student body, will also have knock-on effects at improving student mental health.
For mental health, I think that it's very important for people to be aware of the resources that are available and feel comfortable accessing them. Because I know that if you're struggling to get out of bed every day, then having to like go and research what's there, research different things within the university, but also accessing things outside of the university, like different therapies and everything, it can be really, really difficult. And I know that I've only accessed things when I've hit a breaking point, because even before then, I don't necessarily feel like I should access those things. Like, I'm like, oh, well, am I suffering enough to be worthy of accessing the things that I need to access? And so I like the idea of sort of putting resources together in something that is very easily found on like the SUSU website, and sort of like a directory of welfare support for mental health. Like, so it'll be like directing you to the wellbeing teams, the advice center at SUSU, and also things outside, like things within the community, things that like close by things, like and if you're seeking like mental health support for like therapy or counseling, what's online available, what sources there are for free. Like, for example, I've accessed like iTalk when I needed to last year, and what's, if people have the money, then what's paid for, but just to put everything sort of together.
I think in terms of tackling mental health at SUSU, there needs to be more accessibility and representation in the discussions we're having. Accessibility in terms of, like Vic has said, the website is very outdated in terms of if you're looking for something in a tag, you can end up in a completely different place. Whereas the Student Hub website is so much more clear. And I think, like Sophia has said, again, I'm agreeing with all my opposing candidates, they are making excellent points here. We do need to work more collaboratively with the university because they have those resources and they have the funding. And like you said, we are serving the same people. But I think, especially at the union, we need to be championing those conversations on how can we build. And I think that is where we need that representation, you know, in terms of having our representation leading that criticism. And we need to be accepting to that criticism rather than put those walls up and go, we're SUSU, we can do no wrong. You know, have that VP. And sometimes it's easier when that conversation comes from a VP because you're a staff member. You know, so I think it's getting that platform for students to come and speak to you, raise those issues and feel comfortable that you're going to be a compassionate person and listen to them.
So true.
Whew, where do I start? There's a lot of things to talk about. I mean, I might as well go straight off of Laura because, yeah, on the topic of websites, yeah, it ain't so good at the moment. You've got the SUSU website, which is a bit of a mess, and it's actually one of the things I was called upon to this year to kind of help rework with some accessibility features to be built in, which is cool and all, but I do think another thing that is a big problem in terms of more specifically mental health, right, is the resources available to clubs, because I feel like many societies are absolutely not equipped at all to deal with people dealing with mental health issues whatsoever. And a broken website that doesn't work on mobile phones isn't the greatest place to work off that. There's the other kind of factor of it in terms of where other departments come in, such as those within the university, because just from personal experience, it's not that great having to deal with kind of other services within the uni when you want to talk about mental health problems and helping a student in the union, because there's a whole lot of back and forthing between a university and the union, and then not a lot gets done to help said student. Moving on to kind of the more important part of the uni specifically, in terms of their mental health services, they've got first support, which is great and all if you're in crisis, but they kind of fob you off afterwards. And that's not great if you have long-term mental health issues. So I will lobby really hard to make sure that the university pushes for all students to get the help they really need. Because I'm currently spending £130 an hour for private therapy because I'm not waiting 3 years for some therapy appointment that's probably going to be CBT anyway, which is something I've had for many years. And I know that I'm far from the only person dealing with this. And that's just the start.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Just like another question around mental health, which I've just thought of, is, I mean, you talk about, each of you talk about engaging the conversation, but I suppose what my question is how will you enrich the facilities which are on offer? If I'm, like, when I speak to other people, and when I think of my own personal situation, sometimes it feels like a bit of a kick in the teeth, when you're trying to contact wellness and they don't get back to you for months. And when, I mean, in my case anyway, when they did get back, it was on like counselling over the phone, which personally I think was quite impersonal. My question to you guys is, how would you secure more funding, more like greater facilities, so maybe this could be something which was in person and not so impersonally? Like, I mean, we'll start with Harry.
So first few, like, I think the first thing I think I would do is like introduce like SUSU having their own facilities to help students. I think that would be important. And then really like lobbying to make sure that the student well-being are like using all of their resources and making sure that and lobbying the university to giving them a higher budget. But yeah, I think like where I was going.
We can come back to you if you like.
If you'd like, we can come back.
Yeah.
So about increased funding, like I do believe in increased funding, but I think like much closer collaborative approach between SUSU and the University of Southampton would effectively lead to increased funding without spending a single pound more, because we'd be able to take advantage of the economies of scale of one large mental health service that supports people, in opposed to like what we have now, which is pretty much just SUSU stuff and the uni stuff, and it's not working together. And so that's why I would take a two-pronged approach. I'd take the collaborative approach to increase funding, which would mean, we only need one website. That means we need fewer web developers. We need fewer admin people because there's only one service. That reduces costs. Those costs can be reinvested elsewhere. And then also increasing funding, because increasing funding, obviously you can have more therapists and stuff. Great, two-pronged approach, that would help a lot, I think.
Okay, so the thing about a two-pronged approach in the way that Sophia describes is that it's quite hard for the union and the university to collab on anything at all. And I know that is a problem in many ways, but there is a reason why it's a union. It is an independent entity. And that kind of thing, like in terms of doing the same tools for developing a website, isn't really going to ever be feasible from my view.
Why?
So I suppose the question is, what would you do, though? So in my opinion, in terms of increasing funding, you really have to just like look at how many people are actually working in the union and the university, because from my experience, they are like some of the most lovely people I've ever met. In first year, one of them probably saved my life when they literally drove out to Romero Hall after I was in a massive crisis, just on the floor, just really not wanting to be here. And I kind of just really owe it to them, but at the same time, they are massively short-staffed. And that is something that's not just going to solve itself overnight with a bit of extra funding. There needs... Can you just come back to me? Sorry.
That's okay.
That's of course.
That's okay.
So if you pass the mic to Laura.
So I think in terms of mental health, I definitely agree with Sophia about working more with the uni, but I think we do need to review perhaps how the uni services are structured in terms of their referrals. As someone who's accessed the university counselling service in the past 12 months, I had to wait 8 months after my referral to the counselling service to actually access those 6 sessions, which meant that my issue perhaps wasn't long gone, but it was something that I was already starting to work through, and obviously I could have done with a more immediate referral. But again, because these referrals perhaps aren't as widely advertised, for example, here at SUSU we do have a therapy grant, I believe, that again isn't as advertised to students as it should be, because that can pay for, I think, up to 6 sessions of therapy for a private therapist of up to £70. Again, please feel free to correct me if I'm absolutely off the mark. But I think that is something that should have been more advertised to me than perhaps when I was at the end of therapy and going, okay, now that these 6 sessions are done, off you go. Do you want to access this? It was like, well, no, not now, not after all this time. And I think there are so many specific referrals that we do need, for example, domestic abuse, and that aren't getting covered here at the university, that I think we do need more of those resources that maybe at the union we are happy to give those intersectional resources. But I think for actually tackling mental health at the union, it is a case of making sure that our awareness campaigns are as accessible as possible. If representing our students, being very open to that constructive criticism again. For example, with your friend's experience, I think it is or was it your
It
experience?
was like it's two experiences, but my own and both.
Exactly. It can feel incredibly impersonal, and that's something we need to take on board. And I think as your VP Welfare, that will be such a passion of mine to have that conversation with you or with people like you to make sure that that change is happening for the future.
Thank you.
Sorry, with what some of my rivals have said, I think the thing with a collaborative approach is we shouldn't uncritically support everything the university does. The role of any kind of union really is to one, collaborate, but two, steer the ship using our influence. And we can't turn it around instantly, but we can push the university in a more personal direction, in a direction that goes away from CBT for everyone. Because I was offered CBT. CBT is not helpful for me. And that's something that if I'm elected, I'll do. I'll work collaboratively with the university, but I won't uncritically do what they say. We need to push them in a certain direction.
Would you say it's more of less of a financial problem, more of actually getting staff who actually care about it?
Yeah.
That's more important.
It is a financial problem for that reason, because obviously with capitalism, there's obviously going to be a link between money and getting good staff. But yes, I think there is also a structural problem.
So, Victoria, would you like to answer the question?
Sorry.
It's fine. I would say that I personally, when I came to the uni in first year, I had a meeting with enabling services, and they told me about the therapy getting put on the waiting list, and I just sort of. I never even considered that a possibility, because I was like, the waiting list is going to be too long. By the time they reach out to me, I'm not going to be in a position where maybe I feel comfortable enough to do that. And so, yeah, I think that it's very important to look at where funding is going and making sure that different therapies also are available, because I don't have CBT doesn't work on me either, make the I didn't know that there was a grant you could get for outside therapies. Making that known, and even making that bigger, because 6 sessions, they always say 6 sessions, but that's not enough. By the time you get into 6 sessions, that's when you're first starting to make progress. I think that it's very, very important to really look at the funding, where the money is going, how it's being spent, and try and to get a more broad and developed system for offering therapy and support.
Thank you. Harry, would you like to come back to the question?
Yeah. So, I think I'm just going to add a little point. But I think collaborating, as well as with the university, I think collaborating with services outside of the university on a personal basis, with the services to bypass the university, would be something I would look into definitely, to make things faster, while also tackling the problem with the university and making sure they're doing everything that they can. While I'm tackling university, I would also be looking to make things faster, just by working with the services and organisations who help with mental health, on their own.
And Beams, would you like to come back to the question?
Thank you. Sorry about earlier. As you can probably tell, this is kind of something pretty personal to me, because, it's something that's affected me a lot. Because whilst the people here working both at the union and the university are incredibly passionate about making sure that every student is welcomed, they are woefully understaffed, and stuff is not detected early enough. This is a problem all the way from like primary school, where students do not have their issues identified at any point, and you just end up with loads of people who had blatant problems that they need and deserved to be treated, and they just get no help with it. And that's something I feel like needs to be looked at within faculties. I know it's differing from faculty to faculty, but in the whole university, I don't know if there's a single one that looks at attendance and then actually goes, is this student okay? The only way I've seen that actually being used at the university is to give marks, which is very counterproductive. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. And I think that funding is not something that's just going to be magicked out up of nowhere, unfortunately. I think saving money by making sure that students' needs are identified early so that they don't end up having to go on to a course that isn't long enough for them to get the help they really do need anyway. But if we could bypass that, that could be great.
Thank you. So, Harry, in your manifesto, you talk about minority groups, like voices being heard. How is this going to happen?
How's this going to happen? So some of my plans include developing and introducing new like policies and procedures and events and programs and societies where there will be like incentives that promote diversity and inclusivity, and so like to get these minority groups, have like almost not really a quota, but almost like a questionnaire / like report on who's like kind of in your group and how you can make it more diverse and more inclusive, and almost like making sure like no societies or no programs are like accidentally like leaving people out. I'm sure no one will do it on purpose, but yeah, and just include lots of incentives to promote diversity and personal development, and yeah.
Would anyone else like to add to that?
Yes, I have. Well, it's a minor point in my manifesto because I hit the word limit. But I think the Students' Union would benefit greatly from some kind of sortition system, which sortition is essentially government by random selection. What I propose, and this is kind of a half-baked plan now because it would have to be a collaboration with VP Democracy if I was elected. So I don't want to fill out all the details, but it would essentially be we'd take a stratified sample of everyone in the Students' Union, and then we just like send out invites to them and say, hey, do you want to be on the sortition committee? And then we end up with a representative group of random people who can give feedback and advice to the SABs. And sortition, I could talk for quite a while about sortition, and I won't, but I think it's amazing. And if you vote for me, that's something I'll do. I'll try and get everyone's voice heard by hearing the voices of random people.
Would anyone else like to add?
I've just got something to say about sortition. The thing about that is that in terms of people who report to the VPs, you already have the student officers, for one thing. And for another, for the bigger projects that the union does, you also already have focus groups which are sortitioned. Stococracy is a stococracy or selection by lot or whatever word you want to call it, is something that is kind of, it can be useful, but I kind of think that the problem with with the reunion in terms of getting people on board and representation is that people aren't very willing to actually get involved at the moment. Like, you look through the kind of list of people who are voted in, say, in this current election, or those that are voted in for course rep elections. Over half of the spots are unfilled in course rep elections most of the time, and the ones that are elected mostly go through uncontested and don't end up at a vote anyway. So, in my opinion, I think the kind of way you get more people involved in the union so that we have more of the university represented is by encouraging people more. And that's something I will talk about in a second when it comes to talking about one of the questions in a moment. But yeah, it's hard to motivate students because they are very busy people who really deserve to kind of choose what they want to do. And I'm not 100% sure that Sortition will provide that.
Victoria, would you like to say anything? Check the mic.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that with making sure that there's enough representation within the student union, I think that it's important to utilise the societies that already exist, because Southampton is so diverse and multicultural, and there's so many different societies for different people, from different backgrounds. And I think that it's important to reach out to them, contact them, and ask, what would make you more comfortable? What do you see that needs to be changed? Because not everyone will see it. Like, obviously, if I represent people as the welfare and community officer, there are lots of things that I haven't experienced, and that it's important to go to people who have. And so that would be the sort of BAME societies, but also the LGBT society, the feminist society, everything like that, just to really embrace criticism, instead of being instead of going on the defensive, really trying to take on board criticism and implement it.
Of course. Laura, would you like to add anything?
I would say, as someone who's mixed myself, I may not look it because I'm very white passing, but my family is of a mixed background of Hispanic, Latino and English, and it does give me a little bit more, I'd say, access to conversations about race and inequality and how they're represented here at the union. And I think a lot of students aren't willing to get involved in projects because they're not as accessible to the representation. For example, we have one BAME officer to cover everyone. We have, one disability officer to cover everything, which comes under that umbrella. The same with LGBT. And obviously these aren't bad things. It's great that we're getting these voices out there. But if we refer back to minority ethnic, there are Southampton is so diverse, like you said, that voices can get lost because, again, you've got one person representing a conversation of thousands of students, and their unconscious bias towards their friends or maybe the people that they are having those easier conversations with can come out in what they're representing. So I do agree that a representative is important, but I think we maybe need more intersectional officers. For example, speaking to students, BAME students, POC students, would you feel more comfortable if you had a specific black student officer? Would you feel more comfortable if you had a Asian officer? Would you feel more comfortable if you had a Hispanic officer? Yes, it's creating more roles, but this isn't more money for the union. And again, like you said, I think a lot of people are unmotivated because they're not, I would say, motivated by being valued. And I think we need to highlight that our student officers are valued. It's not just paying them in experience, but in terms of giving them awards, highlighting their work, giving them the trust and the independence to push projects without just going, you're free, off you go. As someone who's been a student officer, the best work I've ever done is when I feel fully supported by I'm going to use the term supervisor, that's maybe not the correct term, but for example, as an English course rep, being able to go off and get that feedback. The best changes I have been able to make are when I have had that trust given into me and knowing that I can go back and ask for help. And I think that's something that is really valuable as a VP, is that you have all these student officers who are also passionate about what they have gone for, that they are going to want to work with you. And I think it's utilizing them to help you open that, act as a gatekeeper of sorts to the community and invite more people to the conversation, so that burden of representation isn't on just that one person.
Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we are on quite a short schedule, so we do have to move on with the questions if Emma would like to continue.
Just quickly, because you are just branching on from the minority group question, what do you think, well, we've both got kind of mature students, but what do you think that could be improved on to help the inclusivity of mature students?
That's a great question. So yeah, obviously I'm a mature student. Mature students are basically students who are entering uni that are not leaving
Sixth form.
leaving sixth form.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically like that are over 19. So yeah, what I would do to include the inclusivity of like mature students is like attempt to reduce the stigma around being that being a student means being like 18,
Yeah.
or like being a first year student means being 18, because for a lot of it's not that. Like for a lot of people, some people retake their years, and yeah, so I think a lot of it would be just reducing the stigma around it, and then like reducing the stigma around like involving mature students, and yeah, I think a lot of it is just gonna.
Would you say the best way to reduce the stigmatization would be like through emails? Like, what kind of campaigns do you think that would help? Or would you say maybe like a special society group for mature students?
For mature students, see that would introduce, if there was a society for mature students, I feel like that would create, I guess, more diversity, and that would create if there was a society for more mature students, I think that would almost create more stigma. You know, I think like in a way like that there needs to be a society for mature students. I don't think that's necessarily necessary, you know, but I don't know. I guess just
It could bring people closer together, but
I guess, yeah, you're right. It could bring people closer together. I guess doing like workshops more aimed at mature students, but also like aimed at everybody at the same time.
Yeah.
I think like just
yeah, no, yeah.
you know. Sorry.
Don't worry. Would anyone else like to add to that?
I think that maybe a society is too strong of a word for mature students, but I definitely think that like making situations and like activities and things where people who are mature students, but also people who maybe have found it difficult to make friends, can go and know that everyone there is going there sort of alone, and everyone there is also struggling, because the majority of my uni friends all graduated last year, so now I have one. And it can make it difficult to involve yourself in things, in like talking to people in seminars and lectures, because everybody else already has friends. So yeah, I think that sort of putting people together who want to branch out, without it being something that's sort of like exclusive just to mature students.
And sorry, can I just add to that? And almost like I've just come up with this, but like maybe all like put in a forum, or like a drop down menu for like on SUSU for like mature students, so they can connect with each other, but also allow almost non-mature students to have access to that forum, so it can create a more involved community.
I think that's a great idea.
Would anyone else like to add?
Yeah, so this is kind of more of a general thing with both mature students and students who have been here for long periods of time, such as ones doing PhDs. But I do feel like a lot of services kind of fall off for students on courses that are postdocs. For example, I know that disability and inclusion tends to kind of take the reins off, which is understandable given that they're now being paid. But they don't offer many things like, say, software or services or anything like that. And it does feel like many of the older students here can be let down a little bit, and I really do want to reinvigorate that a bit. Some of my fellow candidates here have put some really lovely kind of ideas forward to solve that. But
I think it's important to note that they're not paid; they're funded.
Funded, indeed, yes.
It's just like us, almost having a loan. They need to produce results. So
that is another
funded.
thing, because
it's not paid.
Many people really do struggle to get funding for this, especially if you're a returning student doing an undergrad degree, because you have to, because it's a little known fact, but you can actually have your entire loan paid off, and you can then go straight back into an undergrad degree and have your loan again. There's lots of things like that I think returning students and mature students do need to know, and that's just kind of just one thing.
Yeah. And just a question for you, Beams. What will you do differently to ensure inclusivity across campus and with societies?
So there's a lot of things. So starting with SUSU, this building is nice and all, but I see a lot of problems when it comes to accessibility. For example, I'll just say it. People, they need to take a whiz, right? And upstairs there's one toilet there, and it's a disabled toilet, and it's one of the more well-equipped ones in this university. But it's the only toilet in that entire upstairs floor. And that's not great when you have tons of people walking in and out of there all the time, and then disabled people kind of have to wait around quite a lot of the time just to be able to use the facilities in there that other disabled toilets don't have. And that's something I want to talk about as well. So there's a campaign across the country and in other countries called Changing Places. And it's really important because it allows lots of facilities to be implemented that most disabled toilets kind of end up don't have because of overlooked kind of conditions. Things like rails, large bins for incontinence pads, and properly opening doors. That is missing from many, many buildings across the entire university, and I want to look to all of them and kind of get that changed, so to speak. Sorry, bad pun. But anyway, there's that. There's connectivity between campuses, which is not very good at the moment, to say the least. Say you're a student at Winchester, and you want to go down to the pub with your friends in Portswood, right? You can't really do it on the weekends because there's no shuttle bus running on the weekends. And the ones on Monday to Friday stop running at 10:30. So have fun with a 1 hour night out, I guess. Yeah, so the union actually, from what I know, has plans to kind of start working with the university on improving accessibility and kind of social life at Winchester starting in 2025. That's 2 years away, and I kind of want to get on that as soon as possible. Jumping back to here, signage. There's not a lot of signage around the union and the university, and it's not very good. The ones that we do have, you have a few boards here and there saying you are here, and it shows a map, and it's all right. But there's not much else apart from that. There's no braille. Accessibility for colorblind isn't very good. There's kind of bad contrast on stairs, which means that you can kind of fall over if you have stuff like deuteronomy or other vision conditions. Many of the lifts across the university you can't even fit a wheelchair in, so that's not great. there's a lot of things, and I could kind of go on and on and on and on and on about it. And it's stuff that I've kind of been starting and working on this year as Disabilities Officer. Stuff like the Welfare Room, which I've been working hand in hand with Aisha on, the current VP Welfare. And that's been absolutely amazing. I kind of really want to get more and more spaces like that across the university, in all of the campuses, may I add, because going back to WSA, there is one respite place in that entire campus, and most of the time it's locked. So, you know.
Thank you.
And Laura, I know you lobby for student representation, and one of your points was to introduce a men's officer. What will their role be, and what do you think their importance will be?
Yep, absolutely. So when I told a few of my friends I was thinking of running for VP Welfare, one of my male peers kind of pulled me aside and was like, this is a very female-centric role. You are aware of that. There's not really men in the conversation. And again, as a man, that wasn't something that I had immediately thought about, but going away and thinking about it, I was like, we have a women's officer who, again, represents women's issues, works on events and campaigns such as Women's History Month. Why shouldn't we have a men's officer? Because we should value our men's, our male student perspectives. And absolutely, I think it's important with, Movember, male mental health stigma on campus, issues in men's sports. I think we need that perspective of a men's officer, and we need someone who is passionate about those rather than just grabbing the nearest, male student going, you'll be our token man, you'll do in this conversation. We need someone who is willing to champion that. And I think with representation, that's so important to have those people who are willing to. So for that male student, it would be, the idea would be structured around the idea that all student officers are, in terms of representing those issues, but giving that independence of, like the women's officer, what issues do you specifically want to go after? How can I as VP Welfare help you? Who can I connect you to? And so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Thank you. I suppose we are running out of time, so I'm going to ask one last question for each of you. Say time and money wasn't a problem, right? And say you were to get elected. In 30 seconds, describe the policy you would like to enforce the most. And we are going to have to be strict about the 30 seconds, unfortunately. So if we start with Harry, then we'll go on.
So one of my policies is the peer schemes. I would introduce a peer scheme in SUSU rather than University of Southampton, and I would introduce like a 3-year scheme where there would be like 3 people in a buddy group, and they would be it would be like kind of they would be in a group of similar interests, and there'd be like kind of like almost weekly reports that they could do, or questionnaires that they could do to improve the service. And yeah, there's like so much more to that, but I have don't have that much time.
The thing I'm most passionate about is cost of living. It's all good that SUSU does all of this stuff, but if people can't afford to feed themselves or to have menstrual products or to do such basic human stuff, there's no point giving them their higher needs. They need the foundational needs fulfilled. And with the cost of living crisis, more and more people are not having those foundational needs fulfilled. If I had infinite money, I would implement my system of expanded food support and hygiene product support, and I would introduce my meal kits, which give people options, people who may not be so good at cooking, people who may be new to cooking with these ingredients, access to easy, cheap, vegan, delicious food.
Obviously, if there's infinite money, there's a lot that you can do. But zeroing on the points that I have, I would really focus in on the one resource of making it of support available, making sure it's as a website, very, very easy to navigate and accessible, and pooling together and really making sure that it's researched well for everything in the community. So not just mental health support, but also for support for sexual health, really going to the charities that are available, No Limits, and also there are possible things in the community for meal support, for example. I have friends who have used the meal plan called Easy Teasy Meals, which is meals delivered to you using food that will have gone out of date otherwise. So yeah, really making sure that that is then also not just pushed by the union, but also referred to people from PATs and lecturers and everything as well.
Thank you. Laura?
I'd say the policy I'd love to implement and really evolve with all the time and money, or if they just weren't an issue, I think is widening participation, because there's the aspect of better representation to ensure that we can evolve every other aspect of SUSU by having more voices in the conversation and being able to fund those student officers on top of that. But obviously that isn't a realistic thing for now, but if all the money was available. Making sure that there is more access to SUSU products and services by implementing cash back on campus, as well as making sure that the SUSU shop is more affordable.
Beams?
I mean, with an infinite amount of money, I could do a lot of things, but I mean, with a large amount of money, I suppose, I'd do these things. I'd install many welfare rooms across all of our campuses, because, you know, we've got tens of thousands of students. They all deserve a space for respite. I would make sure that our current welfare room community cupboard, which is a place where you can get all sorts of ingredients and all sorts of leaflets to actually make recipes that are delicious, yummy, and vegan. And I'd also put up some little rewards for faculties as an incentive to make sure that faculties refer students to mental health services and make sure that those students are actually supported by their services within them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Unfortunately, that is all we've got time for. So once again, we do highly implore you to vote. The vote will open next Wednesday on the 1st of March, and the ballot will close on the Friday, the 3rd of March. From myself, Serge, Amrit, thank you guys for coming. You've been
Thank you.
very good guests, and good luck in the upcoming elections. And from everyone else, thank you, and, well, go out and vote.